There are so many amazing snakes and other reptiles that I've covered over the last 10 years in SnakeBytesTV, and each week I have to come up with a new concept of what I'm going to educate you guys about, and I hope I do the best I possibly can. This happens to be a Nelson's milk snake. Now the milk snakes, of course, all have those interesting triads, is what the bands are called, that red, yellow, and black. And we all know that they're a mimic animal, which basically is mimicking a coral snake, which is a venomous snake. But of course the saying is, red next to black is a friend of Jack, red next to yellow is a deadly fellow. Of course there's some variations of that, but that's basically what it is. And you can see with this Nelson's milk snake that it is a red next to black, which of course is a friend of Jack's, which is a harmless animal. Now the Nelson's and Sinaloan milk snakes are very similar. The only thing that really separates them is the amount of bands or triads. More bands, over 13, would be a Nelson's milk, which is where they range from, and then the lower triad count, under 13, which is a slightly different range, is the Sinaloan milk snake. Regardless, I'm not going to go on about things that I know today as much as I'm going to ask my crew what animals they'd like me to teach you guys about. I have no idea what they're going to say, but whatever they want me to teach you guys about, I'm going to do my best to educate you. You guys are watching Snake Bites. All right, so Kelsey, I need your help. I'm going to come to the crew today and ask you guys what you'd like me to teach people about. So this is a Snake Bites episode. I'm leaving it in your hands. What animal or species of animal would you like me to talk about today?
I'd really like to hear you talk more about retics.
And what specific do you want to know about retics?
Like how to take care of them, what to expect as they bigger, and maybe genetics.
Okay.
Because retic genetics are really cool.
It sounds like a plan. All right, I'm going to try to tackle this. All right, so as per Kelsey was interested, I've got my girl, of course, Daisy out, who's an amazing lavender albino reticulated python. Now, reticulated pythons are the longest snake in the world. As a matter of fact, the longest recorded snake was a snake called Medusa at 25 foot 2 inches, which is a reticulated python. These guys are certainly one of the biggest and most insanely cool snakes there are on the planet. Sometimes these things can exceed 300 pounds. Now that is a beautifully large snake, and typically they're really good pets. I mean, you know, I don't suggest people that don't have experience with large animals ever keeping a reticulated python or a Burmese or an anaconda, but once you have a lot of experience and you have the ability to keep a big snake, reticulated pythons are a great option for a few different reasons. Number one, they're extremely polymorphic, just meaning that there's a tremendous amount of paint jobs. And those paint jobs can be really diverse, much like leopard geckos and some other animals, in the sense that you can have recessive mutations, you can have codominant mutations, incomplete dominant mutations, and polygenic mutations, including allelic genetics. So there's all kinds of stuff. Over the last 15 or 20 years, there have been people that have really been pioneering the paint jobs of reticulated pythons like you cannot believe. It all started with just kind of yellow-headed reticulated pythons, which are a polygenic situation where you're going to line breed the most yellow head together. And then tiger reticulated pythons came about by a guy named Carl Herman. And then next thing you know, there are hundreds and hundreds of mutations of albinos and pieds and ghost stripes and cows and some amazing reticulated pythons. And the fact that they can have up to 80 eggs in a clutch certainly speeds that genetic process up a lot. When you're dealing with animals, let's say a ball python that only has 6 to 8 eggs, you can only get so far with the genetics because each year you're only producing 6 or 8 eggs. When you have a big female retic that has 30, 40, 50, 60, up to 80 eggs, you can certainly really start beating the genetic odds and producing some really amazing one-off snakes. Now, as you guys saw in the vlog a few days ago, they are really adept swimmers. As a matter of fact, one of the things that's interesting is that sometimes you can find reticulated pythons quite a bit out to the sea in the ocean, and that's one of the reasons why some of the islands in Indonesia are actually populated, because the mainland animals swam into the ocean and swam all the way to the islands. And then what happens is that over generations and generations, they actually adapt to that specific island. So they actually will evolve. And that's why you're seeing mainlands really large and some island forms being only 5 or 6 feet. So reticulated pythons are really amazing animals and certainly something that I couldn't imagine not being without. Again, not for everyone, but I'm glad that Kelsey wanted to learn about them because these guys are absolutely incredible. So Crystal, I need to know from you, what animal that we work with would you like to see me teach our audience about?
Totally the Walnut.
Walnut pythons.
Python.
I am so happy you said that because they are one of my favorites. All right, I'm going to do this. I was so excited that Crystal asked to learn about Walnut pythons because I have absolutely loved Walnut pythons for the last 15 years. I bought my first baby Walnut pythons from a guy named Don Hamper when there were almost none. There might have been 10 or 12 Walnuts in the entire country. So I was so excited to work with them, and I've been working with them ever since. They're a super placid animal that is unbelievable as a pet. The only thing you have to worry about is they are extremely enthusiastic feeders, and if they think you're a rodent, trust me, they're going to come right at you. But as soon as they don't think that you're a rodent, they're just puppy dog tame. As a matter of fact, they're so enthusiastic, there was actually a snake in Australia that a keeper was feeding it with barbecue tongs, and the snake grabbed the rodent and the tongs and wouldn't give the tongs back up, so much so that it ate the barbecue tongs. And this is really true because check out this photo right here. That's a real x-ray of that Walnut python with the barbecue tongs right in it. Now what's interesting is that these guys range in Australia, and they're actually one of the mulga or king brown snake's favorite meals. So little baby Walnut pythons become meals for the mulgas a lot. But in the wild, these guys will eat anything from mammals to birds to even sometimes small lizards and reptiles like snakes. But for the most part, they are rodent eaters, and they'll have up to 20 eggs. And my oldest Walnut python is coming up on 18 years old right now. So these guys will live 20 to 30 years. Walnut pythons are a really great apartment-sized python when you want a snake that isn't huge but is definitely a python and just got a great personality. Hey, so Lori, I need to ask you, if you thought of one type of animal that I should highlight that we keep, that I should teach people from Snake Bites about, what animal do you think it should be? A cool animal that you really love.
I'm going to go with Hognose, Western Hognose, because they're one of my favorites.
That's a good idea because people love Western Hognose. All right, I'm on it. So many people ask about Western Hognose snakes because, quite frankly, they are just such a unique and amazing snake. I always say that when someone gets their first Western Hognose snake, they are going to be completely hooked because I've been keeping snakes my whole life, and these are one of the most unusual and kind of personality-filled snakes that there are. I just don't know. There's something about them. They're not a constricting snake, so they don't hold on, so they're kind of act differently. They do these mock strikes that are super awesome, and of course that little pug nose is just absolutely adorable. Now in captivity, these guys do extremely well, and they're actually native to much of the west side of the United States. And of course there's actually Mexican hognose and then Eastern hognose that range into the east side of the country. But the Western hognose seem to be the best as far as the pet trade, mainly because a lot of hognose are actually amphibian eaters in the wild, and the Western hognose is the one species that tends to switch to rodents pretty well. And let's face it, it's just difficult to keep a snake that you have to feed amphibians to, but you can feed frozen rodents to it and it makes it really great. And there's a lot of really amazing paint jobs when it comes to Western hognose. Over the last 15 years, there's been an amazing amount of polymorphism within these animals. Things like this pastel pink albino. Now there's 3 types of albinos. There's the orange albino, the pastel pink albino, and then there's kind of some that they call the lavender albino that are lavenders, but those aren't quite really an albino. And then there's a bunch of other color mutations as well. And of course there's the axanthic, which is another recessive mutation, much like the albinos, but in this case it's lacking the yellow pigment, giving them that kind of silverish look. And then there's even things like anaconda hognose, which is a codominant mutation that when bred together you produce a solid patternless hognose snake. And there's really dozens and dozens of other mutations when it comes to Western hognose snakes. Now they're just a really good animal that can have up to 20 to 25 eggs in a a clutch, and sometimes will even double and even triple clutch in a year. So they're a very high productive animal, meaning that you're able to really advance the captive bred and color phases pretty quickly in a species like this. The one thing that some people have is a reaction to their bites. Now, I tell you, it's very rare to get bit by a Western hognose, other than the fact when they're feeding, because they're really aggressive feeders. I mean, they are just, I always call them the jaws of the snake world, because they are just like, they come mouth open, they just come flying up. And if you get your finger in the way, you might take a bite. And if it really sinks in, you might have an allergic reaction to it. And that can be anywhere from swelling, a little bit of discomfort, maybe even a little nausea. I personally have never had a reaction at all. To the best of my knowledge, and I'm pretty positive about this, there's never been a fatality when it comes to a Western hognose snake, but it's definitely something that you should be careful with. So if you think you might have an allergy or you don't want to find out, probably do your best to stay away from the bitey end of this guy. But again, when it comes to anything other than food, these guys will never bite and are absolutely epic animals. Okay, Jessica, I need your help. I need to know, if I was going to educate my audience on snake bites with one type of animal, what would you want besides leopard geckos?
Tell us about chameleons.
About karma?
Panther chameleons.
Panther chameleons? I think I can do that. I've got to learn a little bit about them, but I'm going to try.
Okay.
Maybe you should do it.
I don't like the camera that much, Brian.
Of course, this is Karma 5, the Panther Chameleon from Madagascar. There happen to be a ton of localities of Panther Chameleon, and all of them are different colors. These guys can go from blue to green to yellow, orange, red, and beyond popular belief, they actually don't camouflage their color by changing. They can get lighter and darker through something that's called chromatophores, but they only lighten and darken, and that lightening and darkening can come from temperature, it can come from mood, and it can even come from stress. The more stressed they are, the darker they're going to be. Now, these guys certainly have those unique, amazing, independent eyes. They're insectivores, so they're going to eat anything from roaches to crickets to any kind of bugs, even flies in the wild. They're going to have up to 40 to 50 eggs, and the incubation is long, like 9 months long. Their lifespan is typically anywhere from 7 to 10 years of age. Now, some chameleons can last much longer, but the panthers are a little bit shorter lifespans. They're really cool. They have the prehensile tail, and they have those really cool little claws that they are really interesting. And of course, they're always moving kind of in a slow motion pattern, and I would be remiss if I didn't mention that amazing feeding ability. Of course, they have a tongue that's about this long with a little sticky thing on the end. They'll shoot it out and grab their prey and eat it. I tell you what, chameleons are absolutely awesome, but they're not really handling pets. They're more like a pet that you set up a really cool display and you mainly leave them alone because they can stress out. Although I have seen occasional chameleons that seem to like to be handled, like Boris the chameleon on Instagram, for instance. Regardless, these guys are a really cool animal, and you can pretty much choose almost any color you possibly want. So if you're looking for a cool lizard, Panther chameleons might be the right choice. Hey Bella, how's your day? Oh, come on, it can't be that bad. You'll be able to run around later on. Can you do me a favor and help me out a little bit? Just cooperate, will you? What animal should I teach people about? What do you want to learn about, Bella? Yeah, you know, I think Mexican Black Kings are a great choice. Thank you so much. All right, I'll see you soon. Bella sure has good taste in snakes. I tell you what, this is absolutely one of my favorite snakes for sure, and of course it's the Mexican Black King snake. And these guys are native to northern Mexico and can even range a little bit high up into New Mexico and even into the California area. But of course, when they're in those areas, they're usually integrates with California king snakes. So you see a little bit of that hybridization. It's what they would call a naturally occurring hybrid. But the purebreds that are more in the northern part of Mexico are solid black with no patterning whatsoever. And in the light, they'll have this shimmering blue iridescence to them. It makes them really, truly amazing. There's just something about that jet black, glossy snake that just always stops people in their tracks. It's much like an indigo snake, but a little bit smaller because these guys can only get about 4, sometimes maybe up to 5 feet in length. They're pretty good with reproduction. I typically have anywhere from 10 to 12 eggs with a big adult female, and they'll double clutch. So a typical female is going to lay anywhere from 15 to 20 eggs per season typically. typically. They have a lifespan of about 20 plus years, which is pretty cool. And one of the things I think that's really amazing is the fact that they mimic rattlesnakes by rattling their tail. That's kind of a defense mechanism. And believe it or not, these guys will eat rattlesnakes, so they are immune to rattlesnake venom. How cool is that? And again, these guys are one of the most popular colubrid snakes when it comes to sales. People see these things and they go, oh my God, I've got to have one. Regardless, I hope you guys have enjoyed what my crew wanted to teach you guys about, and I hope I've done an okay job of doing that to you guys. And as always, I'm Facebook and tweeting and Instagram on my way through things, so make sure to follow me over at SnakeBytesTV. Until next week, you've been watching Snake Bites.